In the heart of a sun-drenched village, the rhythm of drums echoed through the air, announcing joy and celebration. Colorful fabrics fluttered like butterflies in the wind, children danced barefoot in the dusty paths, and elders gathered beneath baobab trees, speaking in proverbs and laughter. It was wedding season, the kind that painted the skies with hopes and filled the air with ancestral blessings. In African tradition, a wedding wasn't just a union between two souls, it was the merging of families, legacies, and bloodlines. Every step, every beat, every bite shared carried meaning. The whole community became one for the day, each guest a witness to love, and every action steeped in symbolism. But behind the music and merriment, not every heart celebrated. Amma, the elder daughter of the Mbeki household, moved silently between guests, a jug of palm wine in one hand and a tray of chin-chin in the other. She smiled politely, never quite meeting anyone's eyes. Her dress was plain, her hair tied back in a scarf that didn't match the glamour around her. Though older by 3 years, Amma had always lived in the long, imposing shadow of her sister, Zola, a radiant beauty with ambition sharper than the village tailor's scissors. Zola sparkled wherever she went, her laughter drawing attention like bees to hibiscus. She was adored, praised, lifted up like a crown jewel, while Amma became the air around her, necessary but unseen. Their parents, especially their mother, doted on Zola, praising her poise, her figure, her clever tongue. Amma, on the other hand, was expected to be the helping hand. She was kind, yes, but too soft, too quiet, too plain for greatness, they believed. So when Zola announced her engagement to Kwame, a wealthy businessman from the capital, the village erupted with pride. Finally, someone of status, someone worthy. Amma watched the preparations unfold, the house turned inside out in celebration, but no one asked her to stand by Zola's side. Instead, she was tasked with sweeping the compound, arranging the chairs, serving the guests. Like a maid. Like she was lucky just to be there. The more Amma stayed silent, the more they assumed she accepted her place. But deep within her chest, something stirred. She wasn't angry, not yet. But a storm was forming, and storms, when they come, do not whisper. Amma's earliest memories were like fragments of woven Kent cloth, colorful, meaningful, yet sometimes torn at the edges. She remembered always being the helper. The quiet one. The one who watched from the doorframe while Zola twirled in new dresses, praised for her beauty by their mother, aunties, and neighbors alike. From the age of 6, Amma had understood that love in their household was conditional. It was wrapped in silk and sugar-coated words, reserved only for those who shined in ways the world could see. And Amma, with her soft eyes and even softer voice, simply didn't shine brightly enough to claim any of it. Their mother, Mama Efua, was a woman of pride and reputation. She believed a family was only as good as its daughters, and in her eyes, Zola was a golden investment. She enrolled her in the best private school she could afford, braided her hair with imported beads, and pushed her into every social gathering worth mentioning. When Zola entered a room, Mama Efua beamed with pride. Amma, on the other hand, was left to manage the chores, fetch water from the stream, and accompany their grandmother to market. She didn't complain. Not once. Because even as a child, Amma understood her role was to hold the family together quietly, like mortar between bricks, important, yet never visible. It wasn't that Amma lacked intelligence. In fact, she was sharp. She could solve math puzzles faster than her teachers, recite ancient poems by heart, and speak with a depth that often startled the elders during communal meals. But intellect wasn't as valued as charm, beauty, or the ability to impress guests. And Amma had none of those, or so she was told. While Zola danced in the spotlight, Amma learned to find joy in the small things, pressing wildflowers between the pages of her books, singing lullabies to her baby cousins, or sketching village life in her notebooks. She found peace and silence and solace in service. As they grew older, Amma's love for her family remained undiminished. She celebrated Zola's victories, helped her study for exams, and even stitched her dresses when the tailor was late. Yet, her kindness was rarely reciprocated. Zola grew more self-absorbed, their mother more dismissive, and their father, though kinder, remained distant and preoccupied. It was as if Amma's warmth was taken for granted, as if her goodness was expected, never admired. And then came Kwame. He wasn't from the village, not entirely. He had roots there, his father was a friend of the local chief, but he was raised in the capital. When he came to visit during the dry season, everyone noticed. Tall, confident, with the calm aura of someone who knew exactly where he was going. Zola, of course, set her sights on him instantly. But to everyone's surprise, Kwame didn't gravitate toward her. He noticed Amma. Their bond began with shared glances across the compound, quick exchanges of thoughts on books, traditions, and dreams. Kwame was intrigued by her quiet depth, her humility, her understanding of people beyond appearances. They often talked under the mango tree after evening prayers, where the breeze softened and the noise of the village faded. With Kwame, Amma didn't have to shrink. He listened, really listened, to her ideas and thoughts, treating her not just with respect but admiration. For the first time in her life, Amma felt seen. They never made grand declarations of love. It wasn't that kind of story. But in their shared silences, their smiles, and the way Kwame always sought her out in a crowd, something tender grew. Something real. They exchanged letters when he returned to the city. He promised to visit again, to speak to her father formally when he was ready. Amma believed him. She waited. But things changed. One visit turned into many, and Amma noticed the shift. Kwame still looked at her, but he spent more time with Zola. Mama Efua began hosting grand dinners, insisting Zola wear her finest clothes. The whispers started, "Zola will marry that man. Just wait." Amma's heart sank, but she said nothing. She watched as Kwame grew distant, as Zola charmed their guests and flaunted her way into his space. Amma never confronted either of them. Perhaps it was fear. Or maybe it was the painful realization that her quiet kind of love could never compete with a performance. When the official engagement was announced, Amma locked herself in her room and cried into her pillow, silently, of course, so no one would hear. Her love, like everything else she gave, remained invisible. And yet, she didn't hate Zola. Nor did she resent Kwame entirely. Her heart ached, yes, but it also understood. In a world that only rewarded the loudest, the brightest, the boldest, Amma's gentleness had no armor. But deep down, she held on to one belief, that truth, like a seed, grows in silence and blooms in the open when the time is right. And maybe, just maybe, her time hadn't come yet. The wedding preparations took over the village like a storm, bright, noisy, and impossible to ignore. Drummers came from nearby towns, dancers were hired, and the air was scented with spices, roasted goat, and floral incense. The compound of the Mbeki family transformed into a regal estate, draped in shimmering gold and royal purple, the colors of wealth and union. Neighbors whispered that it was the grandest wedding the village had seen in a decade. Tailors stitched day and night, decorators arranged banana leaves and palm fronds, and pots the size of stools simmered with jollof rice and egusi soup. Everything had to be perfect, for Zola. Zola floated through the frenzy like a queen in waiting, giving instructions with a tilt of her head, a snap of her fingers. Her dresses, designed in the city and hand-delivered, sparkled with sequins and elegance. She posed in them for the photographer, laughing as her mother adjusted her geli and dusted her cheeks with powder. Each click of the camera captured her joy, her beauty, her future. And Amma? Amma was asked to stand aside. When the family photos were taken under the giant umbrella in front of the compound, Amma stood near the kitchen, holding a basket of kola nuts, waiting to be told if more were needed. She wasn't dressed for pictures anyway. Mama Efua had given her an old wrapper from the storage chest, a faded orange print with loose seams. "Wear this," she had said briskly. "You'll be sweating with all the work you have to do. No need to stain something nice." There had been no consultation with her about outfits, no fitting, no tailor measurements taken. It was as if she were a hired hand, not a blood daughter. The days leading up to the wedding blurred into a cycle of cleaning, cooking, and fetching. Amma polished glasses until her fingers burned and carried crates of soft drinks with dust swirling at her feet. She woke up before the sun and often slept after midnight, listening to the snores of the well-fed while her own stomach growled. When she passed by guests and family friends, they looked at her with faint curiosity, then brushed past her without a second thought. One elderly auntie even clicked her tongue, saying, "Zola's class, but this maid? She should not be seen during the ceremony." Nobody corrected her. Least of all Zola. Amma caught the moment when Zola heard the insult. She had been standing nearby, fanning herself delicately, Kwame by her side. The comment floated through the air like smoke. Zola's eyes flicked toward Amma, just briefly, but then she smiled and turned back to her fiancé. No defense. No acknowledgement. Just silence. Amma's heart sank a little deeper into the pit of her stomach. What hurt more was not the work, nor even the worn clothes, it was the utter invisibility. She wasn't even granted the dignity of being mistreated openly. She was simply ignored. The daughter whose name wasn't listed in the wedding program. The sister who wasn't part of the bridal entrance. When she brought out trays of puff-puffs and drinks, some guests waved her off as though she were beneath them. Others handed her tips, mistaking her for village help. Her mother, busy smiling and curtsying for VIPs, didn't notice, or pretended not to. Inside, Amma's emotions churned like the river after heavy rains. Anger. Shame. Betrayal. But she had grown up hiding pain behind calm expressions, and she didn't know how to do otherwise. She kept her back straight and her smile faint. She did everything asked of her and more. When the chairs were crooked, she fixed them. When the younger cousins fought, she separated them gently. When the food ran low, she ran to the neighbor's house and borrowed more spices. All the while, she felt like a ghost wandering through her own family's celebration. She caught glimpses of herself in reflective surfaces, the back of a spoon, the window of a parked car. Her wrapper was stained, her feet dusty, and her eyes hollow. But no one looked twice. Zola shone like a jewel under sunlight, flanked by bridesmaids and flattered by photographers. Amma was the forgotten detail in the background of every scene. Still, she did not speak. Not even when her hands trembled while pouring palm wine. Not when a group of guests laughed after she tripped on uneven ground. Not when Zola, drunk on admiration, passed her with a comment, "Be careful with the tray. These are real glasses, not your usual clay cups." Amma simply nodded, the sting barely hidden in her eyes. But inside, the silence was cracking. Not loud yet, but beginning to split like the bark of a tree under pressure. She could feel something changing in her bones, something no longer willing to be stepped on. She wasn't sure what it meant yet, but she knew one thing: this story wasn't finished. Not with her silence. Not with her tears hidden in the night. Not while her heart still beat with the memory of love and a truth no one had asked her to tell. The compound was quieter now. The lanterns flickered low, casting long shadows on the red clay walls, and the night breeze carried the scent of fried plantains, perfume, and jasmine. Most of the guests had retired to their rooms or found quiet corners to rest their feet. The laughter and music from earlier had dwindled into occasional murmurs, replaced by the soft hooting of owls and the gentle rustling of the trees. Amma sat on a small wooden bench behind the kitchen, her back aching from the day's labor. Her wrapper clung to her skin, sticky with sweat and dust, and her hair was pinned up haphazardly. Still, she found this hour to be the kindest of all, when no one was watching, when no one had expectations. She often slipped away during these hours to be with her thoughts. But tonight, something felt different. Something stirred in the air, as though the universe itself held its breath. She moved silently through the corridor to return a basket when she heard voices near the back veranda. The wall was thin, and the windows were open. Curious, she stepped lightly and paused just before the turn. It was Zola's voice, unmistakably sharp and amused. "He's so eager to impress," Zola was saying, a hint of laughter in her tone. "Can you imagine? He actually brought me a bracelet made of real gold yesterday. He said it reminded him of the first time we met. Another voice, Amma recognized it as Adzo, Zola's best friend from the city, giggled. You're lucky, Zola. Kwame is rich, fine, and generous. If I were you, I'd be falling over myself. Amma felt her breath still. Zola scoffed, please. You think I love him? That man bores me. He talks about community projects and books like he's applying for sainthood. I couldn't care less about his dreams. What I love is his last name. His house in Accra. The cars. I've worked too hard to end up like Amma, barefoot and dreaming. The words hit Amma like a slap across the face. Her fingers clenched against the wall. Adzo's voice dropped to a whisper. But what if he finds out? You think he'll still marry you if he knows you don't really care for him? Zola's laugh was cold and confident. He won't find out. Men like him want to believe the fantasy, they fall in love with the idea of being loved. He sees what he wants to see. Besides, what can Amma do? She's nothing. Amma stepped back slowly, each footfall heavier than the last. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She returned to her small corner in the servants' quarters where she had stashed her belongings. The kerosene lamp flickered on the low table. With trembling hands, she reached for her journal, its cover worn, pages frayed at the corners from years of secrets. She opened to a fresh page and picked up the pencil. Asterisk June 11th. The night before Zola's wedding, asterisk. Asterisk I heard her tonight. Heard her say he means nothing to her. That she wants his name, not his heart. She spoke of him like a trophy, a bank account. And she thinks no one sees her truth. But I do, asterisk. She paused, her eyes stinging. Asterisk I remember when Kwame first came to the village. He was quiet, curious. Always asking questions about the land, the crops, the stories of our elders. He smiled at me like I mattered. We spent hours by the riverbank talking about things that lived deep inside us. He read my poetry, said it made him feel things he didn't have words for, asterisk. Amma's breath caught in her throat. Asterisk but then Zola returned from university, glowing, ambitious, loud. She turned heads. She set her eyes on him like he was a challenge. And suddenly, everything shifted. Mama began pushing them together. She said Zola was more suitable. Amma dreams. Zola achieves. That's what she said, asterisk. The pencil moved faster now, her hurt unraveling in graphite. Asterisk I buried what I felt. Told myself it was just a season of the heart. But it never really faded. I see him even now looking at me with questions in his eyes. And I wonder, if I told him, would he listen? Would he believe, asterisk? She stopped writing. Outside, the moon was high, bathing the compound in silver. The wedding would happen tomorrow. Amma would serve the guests, refill their drinks, and sweep their laughter from the ground once again. But tonight, her heart carried a truth no one else seemed to care about. She closed the journal softly and held it to her chest. Her tears came slowly, quietly, the way they always did. No sobs, no wails, just the quiet ache of someone who loved deeply and had to pretend otherwise. The secrets of the night settled around her like mist, thick and unspoken. But in the shadows, something stirred inside her. Something not born of jealousy, but of justice and pain. A pain that demanded to be seen. The sun rose like a promise, golden and strong over the village rooftops, spreading light across the compound that was now transformed into a world of celebration. The air buzzed with excitement. The scent of roasted meats, spicy jollof rice, sweet plantains, and wood smoke curled through the open fields. Vibrant canopies had been erected to shield the guests from the heat, and their colorful fabrics danced in the morning wind like butterflies. Drummers arrived early, their hands already warming up on stretched skins. The rhythm they played was ancient, full of pride, full of memory. Dancers in traditional Kent cloth and beads began to swirl with the rhythm, their feet stamping in sync with the beat of history and joy. Guests flowed in by the dozens, wrapped in glorious African prints, geli tied high, igbatas flowing, shoes gleaming. There was laughter, hugging, clinking of glasses, and camera shutters clicking to capture every moment. Amma, meanwhile, was the ghost among them. She moved between the crowds with practiced ease, her eyes low, her face unreadable. Her wrapper was still the same old one given to her 2 days before, faded purple and barely fitting. Sweat glistened on her brow as she carried trays, poured drinks, and adjusted decorations that had fallen out of place. When she smiled at guests, it was the kind of smile meant to ease tension, not to express joy. Few returned it. No one called her by name. They waved her down with fingers or snapped impatiently. One auntie even mistook her for a hired help and scolded her for being too slow with the palm wine. Amma bowed slightly and apologized, even though the wine wasn't her responsibility. That had become her role, apologizing for things she hadn't done, for simply existing. Still, she moved like water through stone, refusing to break. She kept her eyes down, except when she felt his gaze. Kwame stood near the main entrance, dressed in royal blue and gold, a traditional agbada with fine embroidery that shimmered in the light. He looked every bit the noble groom. People greeted him like he was a prince. He smiled, nodded, accepted blessings, but his eyes strayed. Several times Amma caught him staring. She would look away quickly, her chest tightening each time. But she could feel it, his confusion, his conflict. He seemed to search for answers in her, though he could not ask questions. Tradition tied his hands, and pride sealed his lips. Zola emerged hours later in her bridal attire, a masterpiece of glamour. Her dress was custom-stitched with golden beads that caught the light like fireflies. Her head wrap was enormous and majestic. She walked with the confidence of a queen, but her eyes were impatient, her mouth sharp. "Why is the flower arch crooked?" she barked at a trembling vendor. "Can you people do nothing right?" Another elder approached to offer her a blessing and a gift, a simple necklace carved from old ivory. Zola barely smiled. "Oh, thank you, Ma. But it's not really my style." "Maybe Amma can wear it later," she said dismissively, waving the woman off. Amma saw the flicker of hurt in the elder's face and felt shame crawl into her skin. Still, she said nothing. Zola floated through the crowd like a showpiece, posing for pictures, tossing forced laughter here and there, but never with sincerity. She never looked at Kwame for too long. She posed with him when necessary, smiled when the cameras flashed, then pulled away to adjust her makeup or whisper into Adzo's ear. Amma watched them from the shadows, a dull ache spreading in her chest. She was part of everything and yet part of nothing. Her hands made this day happen, her sweat had laid the mats, arranged the chairs, set the tables. But no one would remember her. No one ever did. The sun climbed higher. The drums grew louder. Guests danced, toasts were made, and the elders began speaking blessings aloud into the circle of celebration. They called upon ancestors, poured libations, and sang songs of union. Amma carried a basket of kola nuts to a group of seated women. As she offered them, she heard 2 of them whisper. "Such a pity about that girl," one said, gesturing to Amma. "She looks older than her years. Is she a cousin or what?" "I think she's the sister," the other replied, clearly puzzled. "But they treat her like a maid." Amma smiled politely and walked away before the sting of those words could settle too deeply. She was used to being spoken about, like a misplaced object in a well-decorated room. Kwame stood still across the field, a glass in his hand, watching her as if trying to remember something long buried. Zola laughed loudly, tossing her curls over her shoulder, oblivious to anything but the camera and the compliments. And Amma, she moved quietly, holding in her hands 100 small duties, and in her heart, 1,000 unsaid words. The sun had reached its zenith, flooding the clearing with a radiant glow that seemed to bless the moment as the wedding ceremony began in earnest. The guests gathered in a semicircle around the altar, their colorful attire blending into a living tapestry of tradition and joy. The air was thick with the scent of incense and freshly cut flowers, and the rhythmic pounding of drums echoed in the distance, creating a heartbeat for the sacred proceedings. Amma stood at the edge of the crowd, her hands folded neatly in front of her, eyes fixed on the unfolding ceremony. Though she remained in the background, the weight of the moment pressed upon her like a physical force. Zola, resplendent in her bridal finery, stepped forward with a radiant smile that, though bright, seemed slightly forced. Her headpiece sparkled with intricate beadwork, and her hands trembled just a little as she reached out to receive the ring, the symbol of the union about to be sealed. Kwame took the ring from the elder officiating the ceremony, his expression calm but eyes betraying a flicker of unease. He lifted the golden band and prepared to slip it onto Zola's finger. But the moment the ring touched her hand, it hesitated. The band refused to slide over her knuckle. Kwame tried again, more firmly, but the ring wouldn't budge. A hush fell over the crowd, the steady pulse of drums seeming to falter. Zola's smile faltered as she pulled her hand back, glancing down at the stubborn ring. She tried to adjust her fingers, to twist her hand in different angles, but the ring was stuck, too tight, as if it were a cage rather than a symbol of union. Murmurs rippled through the guests like a rising tide. Some exchanged nervous glances, others whispered urgently among themselves. The elders in the front, wise men and women who had presided over countless ceremonies, leaned closer, their faces grave. In their culture, the ring was more than jewelry. It was a sacred token, a promise etched in gold that bound two souls. When a ring refused to fit, it was a bad omen, an ill sign for the marriage and the futures intertwined. Some believed it signaled hidden dishonesty, others saw it as a warning from the ancestors that the bond was not yet ready or pure. Kwame's jaw tightened. He looked down at Zola, whose face was paling with embarrassment and frustration. She tried to laugh it off, but her voice trembled. "Maybe my fingers are just swollen," she said, attempting to keep the moment light, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her unease. Amma watched silently from the sidelines, her heart pounding. She knew the truth was far deeper than a swollen finger. This was a crack in the flawless facade her sister had so carefully built. An elder stepped forward solemnly, raising a hand for silence. His voice, though low, carried the weight of generations. "This is a sign," he said. "The ancestors speak. We must listen." The crowd fell silent again, the festive air now tinged with tension and uncertainty. Kwame's eyes darkened, flickering with doubt. He glanced at Amma once more, a look of question and turmoil lingering there. Zola, usually so quick to command attention, suddenly seemed small and vulnerable. Her carefully crafted image of control was slipping away like sand through fingers. Amma's chest tightened with a strange mixture of sorrow and hope. The ring had not fit. The perfect story was unraveling, and with it, the lies that had held them all captive. The elders murmured prayers and blessings, trying to soothe the restless energy, but the unease had settled deep. In that moment, Amma realized this ceremony was more than a union of two people. It was the beginning of a reckoning, one that would touch every hidden secret, every unspoken truth, and perhaps, finally, give voice to the forgotten sister. As the murmurs grew louder and the tension thickened around the altar, Kwame's usual composure shattered. His eyes, dark and troubled, scanned the crowd before settling on Amma. The crowd's attention shifted, sensing something more profound was about to unfold. The silence was heavy, as if the whole village held its breath, waiting. Kwame stepped forward, his voice firm but edged with pain. "This ring," he began, lifting the golden band for all to see, "was not made for the bride standing before you. It was made years ago, for someone I truly loved." "Amma!" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned in surprise, disbelief mixing with curiosity. Amma's heart pounded wildly as the world around her seemed to blur. She stared at Kwame, stunned into silence, memories flooding back like an unstoppable tide. Years ago, when she was still a girl with hopes tucked quietly in her chest, Kwame and Amma had shared a secret. Away from prying eyes, they had fallen in love, an honest, pure love that neither family knew about. Kwame had asked Amma to marry him, promising a future built on trust and affection. To seal their bond, he had commissioned the golden ring, designed perfectly for her slender finger. But the happiness was fragile. Zola, ambitious and ruthless, had discovered their secret. Jealousy gnawed at her heart as she plotted to tear them apart. She lied, first to Amma, telling her Kwame no longer cared, that he had forgotten her. Then to Kwame, spinning false tales about Amma's supposed betrayal and coldness. Their love, once a beacon, was suffocated by deception. Amma's mind raced, recalling the sting of those lies, the cold silence of Kwame's absence, and the unbearable loneliness that followed. She had buried her feelings deep, hiding the heartbreak behind quiet resilience. Zola's face twisted in fury. Her eyes blazed with anger and desperation as she stepped forward, her voice sharp and accusing. "You have no right to speak here, Kwame. This is my day. Amma is nothing but a servant in this house, a shadow beneath me. You're mad to bring up old stories now." Kwame's expression hardened. "The truth cannot be buried beneath arrogance and lies forever, Zola. The ancestors demand honesty today." The elders, their faces etched with years of wisdom and patience, nodded gravely. One of the oldest stepped forward, his voice commanding. "Enough of the silence and secrets. Speak clearly, Kwame. Tell us all that we must know." Kwame took a deep breath and began, his voice steady despite the weight of the confession. He told of the secret love, the engagement, the ring crafted in hope and promise. He revealed Zola's treachery, the lies that poisoned their bond and turned them against each other. Amma listened, tears prickling at her eyes. The shame and invisibility that had clung to her like a second skin suddenly felt lighter, as if the truth itself was a balm. She met Kwame's gaze, seeing in it not just regret, but a hope for redemption. The crowd was stunned into silence again, the air charged with a mix of shock, sorrow, and reflection. Some elders murmured prayers for forgiveness and healing, while others looked at Zola with disapproval. Zola's shoulders slumped, the fierce facade crumbling. She stood exposed, not just as a bride rejected by a ring, but as a sister who had betrayed the very family she was meant to protect. Amma stepped forward, her voice soft but resolute. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I only wanted to be seen, not as a servant, but as a sister." Kwame reached out, taking Amma's hand gently. "It's time we honor the truth, and with it, the love that never died." The elders nodded, their faces reflecting the gravity of the moment. What began as a wedding celebration had become a powerful reckoning, one that would reshape their lives, their family, and the meaning of loyalty and love. In that sacred space, under the watchful eyes of ancestors and community, the truth had finally been set free. As Kwame's words hung heavy in the air, the vibrant celebration came to an abrupt halt. The joyous rhythm of drums faded into stunned silence, and the guests shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between the warring family members. The wedding that had promised unity now teetered on the edge of chaos. Amma's mother, her face a mask of panic and fury, stepped forward swiftly. Her voice cracked with desperation as she addressed Kwame, trying to reclaim control. "Kwame, stop this nonsense at once. You're ruining everything. This wedding is for Zola and our family's honor. Amma is nothing but a servant here, she has no place to speak, no right to disrupt this day." Turning to Amma, her tone hardened, "And you, girl, how dare you listen to such scandalous talk? You bring shame upon us all. If you value your place in this family, you will be silent, or leave." But the crowd, once eager to celebrate, now murmured in quiet defiance. Many guests, moved by Amma's quiet strength and Kwame's honesty, began voicing support. "She deserves respect," an elder whispered. Another nodded, adding, "Truth must prevail over appearances." The village elders, guardians of tradition and justice, exchanged grave looks before one stepped forward, his voice clear and authoritative. "We honor the truth. No marriage can stand on lies and betrayal. This wedding cannot proceed until clarity is restored and respect given where it is due." Zola, who until now had maintained a proud composure, crumpled under the weight of exposure. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she sobbed uncontrollably, her earlier confidence shattered. The carefully constructed image of the perfect bride and favored daughter lay in ruins before the community she had tried so hard to impress. For the first time, Amma found her voice. It trembled initially, fragile yet piercing through the thick tension like a beacon. "I have lived in shadows long enough," she said, her gaze steady. "I was never just a servant or a shadow to hide behind. I am Amma, your daughter, your sister. I loved Kwame honestly, with all my heart, and I was betrayed. But I forgive, not to forget, but to heal." Her words resonated deeply, echoing among the guests and elders alike. The room, once filled with whispers and shock, fell silent in reverence to her courage. The family's chaos was undeniable, but within it lay the possibility of truth and reconciliation. Amma's mother, momentarily silenced by the strength of her daughter's words and the community's shifting support, retreated inward, wrestling with her own pride and guilt. Kwame stood beside Amma, his hand gently clasping hers, a silent promise of support and shared hope. The wedding day had been shattered, but from the fragments emerged a new reality, one where truth could no longer be hidden, where Amma's voice finally broke the silence, shaking the very foundations of their family and tradition. Amma stood at the edge of the gathering, her heart pounding with a mix of exhaustion, relief, and determination. The once celebrated wedding had dissolved into a storm of revelations, leaving the family fractured and raw. Kwame's confession, Zola's breakdown, and her mother's silenced fury had all culminated in a moment that changed everything. Yet, despite the chance to claim what should have been hers, the love and commitment symbolized by the ring, Amma felt an overwhelming need for something far greater than a rushed marriage. She needed to find herself again. The eyes of the entire assembly were fixed on her. Kwame stepped forward, his voice gentle yet hopeful. "Amma, let us begin anew. Forget the past. We can start today, as one." But Amma shook her head slowly, the weight of her choice settling firmly in her chest. "No, Kwame. This is not a moment for beginnings. It's a moment to heal. I cannot say yes today, not without reclaiming who I am beyond this pain and betrayal." Her words rippled through the crowd, some nodding in understanding, others in disbelief. Amma had always been the quiet shadow, the sister who served silently. But now, standing tall and resolute, she was reclaiming her identity, not as a bride, not as a servant, but as a woman deserving of respect and time to heal. Zola, her face still streaked with tears, stumbled forward hesitantly. "Amma, please," she whispered, voice breaking. "I was wrong, so wrong. I let jealousy and greed cloud my heart. I betrayed you, and I am sorry. Can you forgive me?" Amma looked at her sister, searching the depths of her eyes for sincerity. The pain in Zola's expression was real, not just shame but true remorse. Slowly, Amma nodded. "Forgiveness is not easy, but it is the first step to healing, for both of us." Their mother, who had so long wielded authority with pride and strictness, now seemed a shadow of herself. The harsh lines on her face softened as humility took root for the first time. She approached her daughters, her voice low and unsteady. "I have been blind," she confessed. "Blinded by appearances, by ambition, by fear of losing respect. But today, I see clearly. I see the damage my pride has caused." The gathering was quiet, absorbing the raw honesty that now filled the space. The elders nodded in approval, recognizing that true strength often comes from acknowledging one's faults. Amma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of silence begin to lift. She had been the forgotten sister, the overlooked shadow, but now she was reclaiming her story, on her own terms and in her own time. Kwame remained by her side, patient and understanding. The future was uncertain, but the path forward was clear: healing, truth, and maybe, someday, love restored, not rushed, but renewed. The wedding that began with celebration had ended in upheaval, but within the chaos, a new chapter was quietly born. Amma was no longer just a servant or a shadow. She was a woman who had found her voice, and that voice would guide her toward redemption or ruin, but this time, it would be her choice alone. Months had passed since the tumultuous wedding day that changed everything. The village, once buzzing with gossip and judgment, had slowly settled into a new rhythm, one shaped by healing and quiet strength. Amma, who had once been the forgotten sister serving wedding guests, had transformed her pain into purpose. With determination and heart, she opened a school for underprivileged girls, a place where hope blossomed and dreams were nurtured. The school stood as a beacon of change, not just for the girls who now learned to read, write, and dream beyond their circumstances, but for the entire community. Amma's quiet resilience had become a powerful force, inspiring others to believe in the strength of dignity and the importance of giving back. Kwame, who had once been a fiancé lost in betrayal and heartbreak, now approached Amma differently. His pursuit was no longer marked by impatience or entitlement but by respect and humility. He understood that true love could not be demanded or rushed, it had to be earned and nurtured. Slowly, he rebuilt the trust that had been broken, always standing by her side without pressure or expectation. Even Zola, once consumed by jealousy and ambition, found peace in her new role helping Amma run the school. Through service and genuine remorse, she began to heal her own wounds and mend the fractured bonds of sisterhood. Their shared work created a space for forgiveness and understanding, a testament to the transformative power of compassion. The story of Amma and her family didn't end with the fit of a golden ring or the grandeur of a wedding ceremony. It ended quietly, with a victory far greater than any symbol of wealth or status. Amma's triumph was the reclaiming of her dignity, her voice, and her place in the world, not as a shadow or servant, but as a leader, a sister, and a woman whose strength radiated from within. In the soft smiles of the girls at her school and the gentle support of those around her, Amma's story lived on, a reminder that sometimes, the greatest victories are those won in silence, through courage, patience, and unyielding hope.